Alright, so here's a game I played against, I forgot his username. He had about an elo of about 1,100. Um, Very interesting, very messy game. So I start off as white and I play knight to c3. He opens up with a king's pawn, and so I open up with a pawn to d4. He moves his pawn as well on the queen side to d5. So I take. He moves his knight to h6 for some reason, and so I take with my knight as well. So he moves his pawn here to g6, and so I move my double stacked pawn up, kind of adding an extra layer of protection to the knight. So he moves his bishop to sort of attack that pawn, and so I move my knight to protect it. He castles, and I move my bishop to c4. Probably not the best move because he immediately threatens my knight, so I have to pull that back to c3. And then he threatens my bishop here from c4, so I pull that back. From this point, he once again threatens my knight at c3, so I retreat it towards my king. And then he pushes up again, so I take with my a pawn. At this point, I now have two sets of double stacked pawns. So he moves his bishop to e6, threatening this pawn here. I castle. So he's going to move this stray pawn out. He really only has a few options here, because if he moves his pawn here, it's going to be pawn takes, and then if he decides to take with his bishop is protecting it. So his only option if you want to protect this is to use his queen to protect it, and that is exactly what he does as soon as I threaten it with my bishop. And so I move my queen right here to c1 so that I'm threatening this knight here, so that I can take that out. And so he sees this and he moves his knight to g4. At this point, I go ahead and move my uh, black bishop to protect this pawn right here, which is being threatened by both the queen and the dark square bishop. He moves his knight, and so I move my h-pawn up to h3, threatening his knight, and he doesn't really have a lot of places to go. He can move here, in which case you take with king or knight, preferably king because this knight is currently protecting this pawn. If he moves right here, it's either rook or king. If he moves here, pawn. If he moves here and takes, it's bishop, and then he's under threat for the queen with being protected by the knight. So he doesn't really have anywhere to go, so he retreats back to h6, and so I take with my bishop. He takes with his bishop, which I believe to be quite a blunder because I take with my queen, which wasn't protecting anything at this point, and so he goes ahead and threatens my bishop, which doesn't make a lot of sense because it's also being protected. And so at this point, I take my knight to g5, threatening mate. He does not see this, and he takes with his knight, and so checkmate h7. That's the game.